Hola, estoy comiendo comida.
So around 2 years ago, in the summer of 2022, I made a challenge for myself that I would get fluent in Spanish in just that summer. So 3 months of that summer, I would spend studying Spanish, and by the end of that summer, I would be fluent in Spanish. That was my sort of goal that I had. And about 4 or 5 months prior to this summer, this guy in my class who kind of made like this trend where we would, in Sweden, if you don't know, we had to choose our languages in 6th grade, and we get to choose either French, Spanish, or sometimes German. I chose Spanish because that's what everyone else had chosen, and it was like the easiest language anyway. And around a year in, so in 7th grade then, this guy in my class, he made it a trend to like study Duolingo outside of the class, like outside of school. Because when he started doing it, his grades started getting better in Spanish, and it almost became some, like, at least between the guys, and most of the guys from the French class and from the Spanish class started studying Duolingo outside of the class itself. Because it's like, it was fun and people started doing it. So naturally, me being extremely competitive, growing up I was always competitive in sports. Like I remember when we had races in my in 2nd grade or stuff, I was always try to win. I was always try to be the best and run the fastest. When we played Minecraft with my friends, I would always try to be the best. I was like grinded the most and did the most. So naturally I started studying outside of school as well, but I wanted to be the best, so I started doing research into other apps and stuff. And the first app I used was called Duolingo. You probably heard of it. And this is what I'm going to talk about in this video, how Duolingo just doesn't work, and I'm going to recommend other apps that work for me way better. But in general, even the main consensus is that just learning through apps isn't that effective because of many reasons, which I'm going to go through later on. But I did Duolingo for about like a few weeks. I didn't learn that much. I learned the same as pretty much everyone else, not that much. But then later on, I did more research. I found this YouTuber named Ikenna, and he made like this video where he did like a tier list of different apps to learning languages. And he placed 2 apps at S tier. The first one was called Pimsleur. It's like an app, like a podcast almost, except yeah, it's kind of like a podcast app where you can listen through a course, okay? But that one costed money. It cost like $100. So I was like, I didn't have the money for that. And instead, I opted for the second one in the S tier. He like placed, this other app called Language Transfer in the S tier, which is also like a podcast. It's like a course almost, where a teacher is teaching a student Spanish, and you're supposed to listen in and pause and try to answer the questions. And so I opted for doing Language Transfer, and I did Language Transfer for about like a few months. I did it for, I finished it in like 3 months, and then directly after I finished it, the summer came. And I was mind blown firstly. When I went through the language transfer course, I was mind blown because it just sort of cut through all the BS. Because like with the other apps, Duolingo, Memrise, Babbel, all these, they're usually paid, but on top of that, they just had so much like BS like in the way. They had many flashcards, they had like a useless vocabulary, they didn't teach you the concepts. And I'll tell you later on how that like is a big problem. Now, continuing on from that summer, I did tons of research and I tested out tons of different methods to learning. So I already knew that the apps didn't really work, except language transfer did work. So I repeated the language transfer course again, so I could go through everything. And the language transfer course essentially just explains grammar, like the verb conjugation. And so after that, I found a YouTuber named Language Lords and Shauma, both these YouTubers. Language Lords made like this video where he got fluent in Spanish in just 44 days, and I was like, whoa, how did he do that? And he showed his methods, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I tweaked his method a little and sort of applied the concepts. I found this other YouTuber named Shauma. He's like this Chinese guy who goes in New York speaking Chinese, and he made a video where he got fluent in Spanish in just like 30 days. And his method was just speaking. And so eventually I kind of had this like idea of a method, and eventually I tested out all the Quizlets, all the like different like methods I saw online. And closer to the end of the summer, around a month or so before the summer had ended, I started focusing on these 2 exercises that I started doing. And these 2 exercises I called transcript training and narrate, elaborate, and contemplate. Those are the 2 like exercises that I call them. And so quickly to summarize these exercises, transcript training, it's kind of like what I got from Language Lords, where he would watch native Spanish content and study that instead of studying other type of content. Now, the way that we studied was a little different, but the concept itself is the same. Instead of studying content that isn't native Spanish, I studied native Spanish content because that's what real Spanish sounds like, and like that's how I would be able to speak. And so I did that, and I call it transcript training. The next one is just a little like framework to how I should speak Spanish, in the sense that like how to develop my vocabulary in speaking, which was that I would narrate. So I would say, this is what I'm doing. Estoy grabando un video de YouTube. That's what I'm narrating. Then I'm elaborating the why, like why. Porque quiero ayudar a la gente. Boom. And then contemplate. ¿Por qué quiero ayudar a la gente? Why do I want to help people with Spanish, for example? right? And so that's just like a simple way to just yap. That's what the framework is, just yap. And if you don't know what to yap about, go to like translate and then translate to know how to say what to say, and then continue to yap. That's like my yapping framework, if you want to say it. So after I did that for about like a few weeks, I remember a few days before summer ended, before the first day of school, I went on this app called Hello Talk, and I went on like these live chats, and I had literally had like an hour-long conversation with native speakers. And after I got off the call, I was like, wow, I just got fluent, like just like that. It was like almost like a shock almost, but it was a really proud moment. And after that, we got like a new Spanish teacher, and I started speaking in Spanish with her, and pretty much after that, I didn't study any Spanish at all. But I was fluent to a point where I could have a conversation. Like I was conversationally fluent, so I didn't really care about like getting to that super high level, and I also knew that it would take me way more time. So I decided, okay, let me slow down the pace, let me just speak Spanish like just generally, instead of like studying it super hard like I did during the summer. And later on, that student who had started the trend of studying on Duolingo, he left the school, right? And I think we had like a 10-year anniversary or something at our school. We had some sort of like celebration at our school, and so he came back to our school and visited. And I suddenly like was like trying to speak Spanish with him and everything, and he literally didn't know anything. Like he literally didn't know any Spanish. And no hate to him or anything, but the guy who started studying Duolingo before anyone else, like the guy who started studying Spanish before anyone else, literally like didn't know anything. Granted, he probably stopped studying Duolingo. Whereas when I did the methods that I did, not only did I get fluent like in a few months, but I would now remember what I learned, and I was also like more engaged in what I learned. And so that's my personal experience why Duolingo doesn't work. But I'm gonna try showing you right now the way that it's just not good. So here's Duolingo, and I've selected Swedish because I was born and raised in Sweden. I'm a native speaker of Swedish. So I'm gonna show you how the tests and the things that they talk about here is just doesn't work. The main reason I even got fluent was because I was studying like the Spanish that was real Spanish, like real spoken Spanish by real Spanish people. Like spoken Spanish isn't the same as written Spanish, but real Spanish, el español se habla muy rápido porque es un idioma así, es un idioma como otros idiomas que se habla muy rápido, y por eso tengo que hablar. That's what real Spanish would sound like. And so these tests, even it won't sound like real Swedish, but let's continue. So let's go. Had. So even right here I can see, at least if we're gonna put this into Spanish, right? Had, that could mean, even in Spanish, it could mean it could be different in every single context. Even in Swedish, like, it could be, I mean, Swedish is an easy language to learn, but even so, like, there's different contexts to had. Actually, let me try it in Spanish later on. I'm gonna go through this test, and then we're gonna switch to the Spanish one to see how it is. Have you heard about the new teacher? So even here, this sound, real Swedish is a slower language compared to Spanish, right? But even in Spanish, even in like other fast languages, this is the speed that they speak in.
Har du hört om den nya läraren?
I remember there's this guy who came into like my mom's business, and he wasn't from like the city of Sweden. He came from like the coast area. And so when he came, like, he was speaking extremely quickly. Even in Stockholm, people speak extremely quickly. And so studying a language, even right here, when we learn our native language, we didn't do this. We didn't go on Duolingo. We didn't do any of these, like, put these words together sentences. No, we heard our parents talk and we tried understanding them. And so that's the exercise I did to learn Spanish. And the results I got were like literally better than like any other app or anything. It's crazy, bro. Put locked.
Det har regnat hela dagen.
It has rained or been raining all day.
Kom hit.
Okay, I don't know if I should go through this entire thing because it's
Mamma har gjort en soppa.
like, alright, come on. Like stuff like this. You've probably seen the meme where they like, Duolingo has sort of sentences that just don't make sense. And yeah, it's true. Let's take Spanish, okay? Berta, what? There we go. Like what? So they let you, I've actually never seen this process. So they let you go through like what the words mean.
Fui.
Okay. Al salir del restaurante, yo fui a una fiesta. But hold on, I want to try not pronouncing it, so I want to see if that makes it better. You don't have to get off now. Like, okay, okay, here, get off, right? In what context? Like, get off me? If, like, let's say you're laying on me, get off me. Move, to leave, like, leave from here, leave now. You don't need to get off now, like, okay, bajar, okay, they mean literally get off, like, get off in the sense of go down. Bajarte. Alright, bro.
Mi celular no funcionó anoche.
Okay. Even that accent, what?
Mi celular no funcionó anoche.
Okay, it's a little faster, but it's still not real Spanish, and whatever. My cell phone did work yesterday, or last night.
Mi cámara no funciona.
Mi cámara no funciona. Ah.
Función.
Ellos se ríen cuando el gato canta.
At least they put, I'll commend them here, they put ellos instead of ellos, and they put have a little like different accent. So I have to speak it. Okay, let me say something different. Ellos te ríen cuanta el gato cantas. We ordered 2 beers last night. Nosotros pedimos. Even this can be said in different ways. In different contexts, this can mean different things. Like, if you're talking about like a hypothetical situation, then this would be a subjunctive. If the context was a situation where the person who you're talking to knew what you were saying, then it would also be a different form. Also, you could have said, we were ordering 2 beers last night, which is another way of saying it. But like still, either way, this is understood in different contexts. But anyway, let's say pedimos. I'm guessing, right? I don't know. Okay, pedimos. Okay, great.
Al regresar del museo, ¿descansaste en tu habitación?
Al regresar.
Al regresar del museo, ¿descansaste en tu habitación?
Al regresar del museo. Descansaste en tu habitación.
Al conducir por el centro, vimos a unos payasos que bailaban y decidimos ir a otra ciudad. Tuve mucho miedo.
The issue with these sentences again is that that's not how real Spanish speaks. And so if I was just learning Spanish again, if I would get accustomed to this type of speech, that's not how real Spanish sounds like though. And that's the issue with these apps and these memorizing and these like Quizlets and stuff. They don't teach you words in context, they don't teach you words in accent, and they don't teach you words that are natively used. And so all that together just leads to a very bad way of learning. You didn't do this when we were growing up. I never learned English, Swedish, Spanish, or Azeri using this. And you've never learned your native language using this either. So why are we learning other languages by using this? It makes no sense. Anyways, solo cuando bailan. No.
Nos reímos cuando mi perro habla en español.
Okay, can we skip this?
Nos reímos cuando mi perro habla en español.
We laugh when our dog speaks Spanish. Alright, bro.
Al escuchar un ruido extraño, nos preocupamos mucho, pero después vimos que era nuestro hijo que miraba la tele.
So even here, there's another thing. Like, sure, they're trying to get a little context here by defining the context in like a situation, but it's much better to look at real context in real situations, or at least in like real situations that actually could have occurred. And that's how we learned our own native language. Why are we doing this to learn this language? And like, the results showed for themselves. I heard for a regular person, like the average person to learn Spanish, get fluent in Spanish, it takes 600 hours of studying. For me, it took me less than like 120, and even 120 is like stretching it. I'm being generous by adding those because I didn't even study an hour a day. Assuming that I did the language transfer course before the summer, then I did the language transfer course during the summer, so I repeated this course twice, and then I studied an hour a day every summer, and then I added an extra 20 hours after the summer, then I would be 120. But even so, I didn't even like do that much. I did like half of that. So yeah, that was just me trying to show how apps like Duolingo just aren't good for studying at all. They don't work. They're fun, yes. If your goal is just to like get some words here and there and learn a little more than like the rest of the class, sure, maybe. But even the way they explain concepts, I remember they were explaining the difference between es and esta. And it was just such a terrible way of describing ser versus estar. Even like teachers, like Spanish teachers, try to explain ser and estar, like how one of them is permanent and one of them is temporary. Like even that is a bad explanation. So yeah, I'll quickly show you how the language transfer works because it's extremely good, bro. It's genuinely one of the best like language learning apps ever. So language transfer is like, it has these different courses, right? He has music theory, Spanish, Arabic, Turkish, German, Greek, Italian, Swahili, French, and also for Spanish speakers, he has an English course, which is pretty cool. But this is the first course that I took, and this is the Spanish course. There's like lessons. So they have all these lessons, and like you can just listen to any one of them. So let's go to 75.
What was to do or to make?
Hacer.
Hacer.
So here, for example, he says, what was to do or to make? And then I would pause it and then say hacer, because that's what it is. And then the student replies.
For the informal positive command, we have a shortcut. We find the U version of the verb, haces, and we take away the S, hace. But with hacer, we have a new regularity.
And we just
the
do as.
informal command from hacer is as.
As.
H-A-Z. So in most of Spain, you will hear as.
As.
So if you want to say do it,
Then I'd pause it and then say aslo or asla.
Hazlo.
hazlo. Good.
That's how it is, and the whole course is about 12 hours long, and I just did around one lesson a day. But if someone did like 3 lessons a day, one in the morning, one in the midday, one in the evening, then you could easily finish the whole course in about 30 days. The great thing with language transfer is that explains the concept of how the things work. So language transfer, the guy saying it, he explains why certain things are, and it makes it so much easier to understand. For example, the word al in Spanish, like we saw in Duolingo here, right? They use the word al. In language transfer, he would explain that al is a contraction of a and el. After years of saying ael, 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 al, it became al. Just like how we have does not and doesn't. So that's the concept that's being explained. With apps like Duolingo, Memrise, Anki, Quizlet, these apps they don't explain the concepts. Rather, they just have a list of the words and you just have to memorize them. The issue with that is when you don't understand the concept, you won't know how to use it in real life because it changes based on context. Which is why the concept is more important than the memorization. And like I even tried doing all those memorization tactics, and they were just a waste of time, honestly. I remember maybe 3-4 words from that memorization, and the difference is I remember 4 or 5 words from my like Anki deck, but I literally remember like almost every single word from the language transfer quiz. You know why? Because the words I learned were, firstly, they were important, they were very common, which means when I did study Spanish, I also saw them. They were repeated concepts, they weren't just memorized, so he would ask you about the concepts of the verbs, not just the verb themselves. And he would ask me to say those sentences and use them in context. And so that's what I like about language transfer. Now, there are also some downsides. Some things that he teaches are sort of unnecessary. I don't really see them that much. But definitely something that if you're going to study Spanish for free, I would 100% always take language transfer over Duolingo. All my like classmates, we can vouch for, like when I first found out about language transfer, my friend literally wanted to gatekeep it because that's how good he thought that it was. Because it was such a trend and like a cool thing to learn Spanish. So we want to gatekeep. It's like kind of like how you gatekeep a fragrance from your class, where when you gatekeep like something. We literally gatekept the app because it was that good. So yeah, this is just my video, kind of like a Keno's video where delete Duolingo and just take language transfer. It's not like an ad or anything. I have 1,000 subs, I don't get any sponsors or anything. But literally, if you're going to learn Spanish and you don't have any money to spend, I would 100% recommend, if you're going to use any app, it just would rather be language transfer than anything else. If you want me to personally help you get fluent in Spanish, just like how I did very, very quickly using the methods that I used to get fluent, and then I have my own personal Spanish school, which is a very premium price. If you want to get early access to it, just add me on Discord and tell me. And I'll have my Discord usernames in the description. And I hope this video helped you, bro, and stay humble.